My name is Nick Benson. Been in marketing and strategy for a number of years now. I've worked for both agencies as well as for government. I was Minister for Sales Director of Communications for 5 to 6 years. Worked for Absa Bank in internal communications and change and program management around the Barclays and Absa, the divorce that we had. So a lot of culture change and a lot of communication. So what I've kind of found over the years is that a lot of times we get employed to do campaign or marketing or designs and everything else. But a lot of times when you ask who the target market is or what exactly is it that you need to do, they say, okay, well, I don't know who my target market is. I don't know who I'm trying to advertise to. And I don't really have a view of my strat. And I'll figure it out as I go. That tends to be the reverse of what you should be doing. So today we're just going to very quickly kind of walk through the foundational points of how to do a strat, how to do a marketing strat, how to get from start to essentially that brand campaign management point. So that brand strat, essentially. So it's that the foundational questions that you need to be asking. So guys, please feel free to, I like some conversation. I don't like to present and talk millions of things about things. So please, if there's some questions or something, please just say, hey, Nick, can we just run it through here? And that's cool. Okay, that's cool. Awesome. Cool. So there's 4 points to actually building a strat. So it's your company insights, it's stuff that you have figured out that, as you mentioned with Golden Circle that you guys have, you do it a bit differently. You figured out that there's something missing and you've got a bit of a niche. So it's that consumer truth that you're looking for. Then it's your category insights and truth, as well as the consumer truths. So today we're going to run through a very practical example that if you run it through, you'll understand how this then applies to your other sort of marketing strats that you guys are going to be doing. So imagine that, because if you guys have kids, if you have children, you would know that, your child might come up to you and say, hey, look, Dad, Ma, I need your brilliant mind, your beautiful mind to help me figure this one out. How do I sell, because I don't know if I need to cut grass or do I sell sweets at school? And I'm sure that we've all sold sweets at school. And he says, well, Ma, Dad, or 8 hours a month, okay, I can work on this. I've tried to sell sweets at school at the monthly fair, but I only sold 8 sweets. But I've cut grass for 2 people in my neighborhood, but I don't know which one to dedicate to. And I have about 8 hours of work that I can do within a month. So apply this to your company point of view to say, right, you don't know in what sort of markets you should be fiddling around with and how you should approach it. So this is essentially from a kid's point of view, because they need a decision now. Then we say, okay, well, this is cool. So if you guys have a pen and paper, you can write down, this is a basic template that you can use to think about it, saying, right, what is our marketing objectives? What are our targets? What is our brand strat? What is our budget? And I can tell you right now that the budget is 0. It's whatever you can make it, and that's whatever you can do. But if you have a budget, this comes into play a bit later on. So we got a lawn mowing, or do we sell sweets at school? We have 8 hours a month. The very first thing that I would do is say, okay, cool. Well, what is the market size? And that's always the tricky part. Is that how do you figure out the market size for this? So one of the main things is, how do you guys think you would figure out this market size?
I'm
not too sure.
Me too.
Okay, cool. So I took a stab at this, and I tried to figure out what the market size is for kids to cut grass, essentially. So I said, okay, right, how many homes are in the area, and how many of those homes actually pay for people to cut their grass? But also, how quickly does grass grow? So once a month, I would guess it's pretty long, or once a month. And then you're looking at the number of houses that I can get to in that area, as well as how many of those are actually paying for a service. So I took some wild guesses with maths here, and I walked around. So you would kind of work around, you say, "Right, how many, because remember it's kids. So the kids would need to drag around a lawnmower, cutting grass sort of thing where, with them. So I said, right, there's about 40 homes in my neighborhood around here. How many times would they cut the grass? Say once a month, so that's 12. Then the percentage of homes that actually pay to cut the grass. So that's about half of them would actually pay. Then the average price to cut grass, I have no idea what the average price is. So, so I took a guess and said 10, and just for math's sake. So you would basically say about the number of houses, the yearly cost, times the percentage of those who would actually pay for that, plus the average price, and that's the market size. So I came up with an annual sort of or profit of about 2004. What do you guys think? Do you think that's kind of makes sense? Kind of the whole guessing game, yeah. So that's essentially our market in that point of view. Yeah, morning, Lucy. Morning, guys. Yeah. So then we said, okay, but cool. We have a market size for a cutting of bottom grass. But what is our market size for the sweets that we sell at school? But this is a bit differently, because it's a quote unquote it's a brick and mortar sort of position. You've got to set space and you've got to get people in to come to World War II. So how would you work out the market size on that? So take a minute, just think about it, and then please feel free to let me know or put it into the chat. Okay. I also took another stab at this and said, okay, what? We're selling, say, lollipops, right? They could only sell, and they mentioned up front that they could only sell 8 sweets per day, and they could only do that fair at least once a month. So that's 8 sweets a month for 12 months. So the price of the lollipop was say R2. The profit was say R1.95, and so then your sort of their whole income would have been 108.20 cents. So we got a fair amount. So now we need to take those sort of market size and those whole opportunities and kind of put them in a visual way that you guys can see. So who do we choose? Do we say we go for lawn or do we go for sweets? So we say, well, let's weigh this up a little bit. So we say, well, so I did some maths here. So, and I kind of assumed because we originally said for the cutting of the grass would have been, say, 2004, their annual sort of profit. But remember that it's children, and they mentioned up front that, hey, look, it takes me 1 hour to cut grass, and I have 8 hours a month available. So we did some maths on that, and 8 times 10 times 12, we kind of got to 9. Then from there, we looked at the schools and the sweets. The sweets you would only make about 180 cents. So we can clearly see that it's more profitable to get into the cutting grass. So our opportunity there is to cut the grass rather than to actually sell sweets at school. So this is very important, especially when you're doing strats, is to weigh up those opportunities. Because a lot of times we might assume, hey, no, it's more easier to make sweets and I can produce that at mass and people will buy it, but you need to be looking at that market size. So the matter stuff is saying, okay, cool. So if we go for the cutting of the grass for opportunity, so we use SMART, which is specific, it's just measurable, it's achievable, it's realistic, and it's time bound. This gives us a little more, a tighter objective to get to. So again, I took a stab at the objectives to realize that they have 8 hours a month. They can cut 2 people's grass. So it takes 2 hours to cut the grass. So they have a spare 6 hours. So they need to find 6 new homes to cut the grass for every month for 2021 in order to achieve the growth. So there we go. We already got, in the first few minutes, we already got the objectives of what we're trying to achieve, and we got it in a nice and a concise way, and we actually have the data to back it up. That's the critical part, is actually have the data to back it up a little more tightly. Cool. You guys are happy so far, right? Any questions? Cool. I'll move on. So we say, okay, from a strategy point of view, say, okay, well, what is the problem? So a lot of times this is the classical brief that you get from a customer to say, hey, look, I want to be aware. I want everyone to be aware of my product or service. That's the classical brief. So cool, but we need to get this a little more tighter. We need to be more targeted. Saying, so what is the problem that you're solving for your people and why is it important? So I asked the kids, hypothetically, say, okay, cool. We'll walk around your target market, we'll walk around your audience and say, what are the 3 types of lawn people that you can cut the grass for? So who do you think that would be? Just if you had to choose about the types of people who would need their grass cut, for example, feel free to put into the chat or just put up your hand. So I took a stab at this again, and I said, well, there's 3 main sort of people. There's the chore masters, I call them the chore masters, because they want to cut the grass themselves. They're the handymans, the handy ladies. They're the people who want to get their hands dirty and all that stuff. So they enjoy just cutting the grass themselves. Then you got the outsourcers. They will know, I'm already cool, already got a person, all good. Then you got the lawn neglectors. And I don't have time to cut my grass, and my grass gets long. So out of these 3, who would you go for? So the market would be the chore masters they're already set in their ways, they really like what they're doing. Then the outsourcers are saying, no, I already got a person, so you'll need to fight with those other guys, and then it's a price war, and there's a whole lot of problems there. So rather not. So the neglectors are maybe a good idea. So the neglectors would be actually a good target model. But how do you get those guys who have never paid for a service before to buy a service? So we say, okay, well, cool. Let's take a walk around again and count how many people in our target audience, in our target market, would actually are involved. So, so then you got the chore masters, the outsourcers, and the neglectors. So the neglectors, we counted about 20 homes there. So it's when you're starting to see some data here and you're starting to say, okay, maybe that's actually a great market. There's a lot of people, they're neglectors, there's no real competition, and you can get in there, but with the right appeal. I took a guess and said, right, our target market would be the new lawn neglectors. Okay, so now comes the trick. Well, now comes where you pay people money for. So getting those that insight for that strategy. So what we're going to be doing, and it's very quick and it's an easy sort of exercise that you guys can do, is just we're going to use the why ladder. And the why ladder, I love it because it really gets you thinking a lot. So we're looking for that emotional trigger. You're looking for that critical reason of why they don't want to do it, and it's that emotional sort of trigger of what you're trying to get to. So a lot of times you do, say, 3 or 4 of these if you can. But today we're just going to do 2 to feel of it. But normally you'll do, say, 2 to 3, and you'll figure out that, hey, maybe I'm digging a bit more deeper. I'm getting a little more why the reasons exist. Because if you don't have a passion for the problem, you're not going to have a passion for the solution, if that makes sense. That's the critical part. So, guys, feel free with your pen and paper to write down a why ladder quickly. So we can start off with, I don't have time to cut my grass. That's the neglector would say that, your customer would say that. And then you'll say, okay, well, why don't you? So there's 5 steps to all of this. But again, a lot of times you might only get to 2 to 3 sort of steps, or if you can get to 5, that's awesome. But a lot of times, it's 2 to 3 and do a couple of them and kind of figure out different ways and paths of why people wouldn't buy your service, wouldn't use the service, or don't care about the problem. That's essentially what you're trying to get to, is that emotional hook again. Okay, cool. So I'll give you guys a few seconds to just quickly write down your sort of answers. So again, I took a stab at it. And I said, okay, well, why don't you want to cut your grass? Well, I'm busy and I have more important things to do. And so why is a grass not important? lawns are for other people. I don't care about what my neighbors think. Well, why don't you care about what your neighbors think? Because they're out for themselves. They don't. There's no community here. There's no reason to care. And how so? Well, I don't respect. Well, they don't respect my property. Dogs come and they, on my lawn, and so no one cares about my property. They throw trash on the lawn. They don't care about my property. So why should I care about it? Well, that's pretty cool. So then I took another stab at it. So then you see that we'll keep kind of doing this 3 to 4 times so that we kind of get a deeper and emotional hook on this. So I don't have time to cut my grass. It's not important. I don't have anyone to impress. Well, why don't you bother? Why does that bother you? No, yes, it does bother me a little bit. Or no, it doesn't bother me. So it's that lawn presents that openness to the community. No, because that's that viewpoint. So that's something that you can get to, saying, now now there's something here. There's an opportunity here. There's an emotional hook here. There's something here that we can work with. So feel free to kind of write down your why ladder. But I've already kind of felt that, hey, no, I think there's something here. So when you don't care about your lawn, neither do your neighbors. That's essentially that little hook that we can use, that insight that we can get into. So there we go. We've got our brand strategy right there. So that's essentially, look, it's quick and dirty, and we'll refine it a little bit more as we go. But we really got our objectives, we got our target, we got our brand strat, and then we got our budget. So we kind of have now a view of how we're going to operate. Any questions, guys? Or you guys all good?
All good from my side. Thank you.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, it's simple, and it's that practical, just thinking through a problem that really helps you later on. I kind of think saying, okay, right, I already know my target audience. I have a view. I've got some data to back it up, and I have a way to approach this. And that's essentially what we're trying to get to, is a way to approach it. So we have our brand strategy. Sort of, it's very dirty and quick and dirty, and now we're going to refine it a little bit more. We're going to take 10 to 20 minutes to just refine it a little more tightly. And this is the real fun part of it. So there's a number of ways, and it's a bit of a debate of what is an insight. People call it the truth, the single point of truth. Others say it's the aha moment. But it's basically your product attributes mixed and kind of mixing with a counter common knowledge, and bringing those two together to give that aha moment that we kind of all feel. And a lot of times, when you hear it and it's simplified and you're like, yes, that's it. That's the truth. That's that hook that we're going to use. That's essentially how you then come towards that brand strategy. So a simple task, and I know it's simple, but it's critical. So we list all the attributes and features that are benefits, for an example, for kids for cutting grass. So feel free to add in your own of what you think. I kind of took a stab again at it, said, well, kids have energy, they have time, they have resilience, they have that whole optimism. Kids are pretty good at because they're plants, their willingness, their eagerness, and they also have good knees. They're also more fit and more flexible. I don't know about you, but my knees, as I get older, are getting more and more flat. And again, kids' labor is cheap, for lack of a better word. So we're going to list all the common sort of thoughts that lawn neglectors would have, kind of based on their lawn. So again, feel free to put into the chat, or kind of just put up your voice. What do you think would be those common sort of thoughts that these lawn neglectors would have? Again, I took a stab at it. So I'm just bad at it. I just neglect it. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll cut the grass tomorrow. It's hard enough to keep myself alive. I can't keep my grass alive, because I'm doing it anyway, because I'm not a plant person, all sorts of negative thoughts that all neglected would kind of have and do. So then our next step would say, right, cool, then come up with the opposite. What is that opposite of that thought? And this is where we're getting to that counterculture, that counter thinking, essentially. This is where the real thinking then comes into that play, saying, like, look, I'm bad at this. Yeah, nonsense. Because you're great at this. No, I'm being neglected. No, you're being obsessive, because I'll do it tomorrow, I'm doing it now, So you're changing it, and you're making it that future state, essentially, that you're making it saying, what is it that you would like to do? You would like to be, it's that utopian vision, essentially. So you can do this with all customers, and saying, because I don't like this, I'm not really a recruiter, or I'm not really an IT person, or something, saying, no, nonsense, you are an IT person, and this is how you can become one, or something. So that's that negative sort of switching that we do. Then we say, okay, cool. So we'll take that list very, very quickly, and we'll attach it to the kids list that we did before. We say, because I'm just bad at it, nonsense. So kids have energy, and they're always great at stuff because they have that energy that they can put in. No, I don't have time to do it, or nonsense. Kids have a lot of time to do it because they can help you out with that. No, that's all youthful optimism. I'll do it tomorrow. Nay, nonsense, because it's now or never. That's essentially what you're looking for. So we'll take those sort of viewpoints and those sort of counterpoints that we put together, and we attach it with our brand. So our brand is the kids' energy that you're looking at, and with the counterculture. So we're really starting to get that sort of whole mixture there. Then we start to just do a quick exercise. We start to say, okay, well, grass never stops to grow, and I'll never stop coming back to it. Or maybe because I neglect my own lawn, but I have someone who can take care of it. So we're looking for that brand sort of slogan. Or we can say, manicured lawns is hard, but we make it child's play. That's a simple slogan. That's a simple sort of brand message there. So manicured lawns are hard, but we make it a child's play. So you can see with the, what we mentioned with the negative thoughts that the guys had, before, saying, oh no, I don't have time, it's hard work, and we matched up with the energy, with the messaging, with the brand of the kids to say, kids are, they're playful, they can get stuff done quickly, they're resilient. So we match that up, and that becomes your little key point there. So that's a quick sort of board exercise that we can do to kind of view that whole thing. So now we got our marketing objective, we've got our target, we got our brand strat, and we have a budget. So it's pretty simple. Right? That's essentially how you set up. So you take this, and then you can take this to say, okay, right, I'll go to my brand, get designs, I can start looking at my campaigns, because I already know who the target market is. I know what the brand strategy is. I know how to approach it. And that makes that life more easier for you guys, because then you don't just waste time trying to figure out, okay, what are we going to say and how are we going to say it? How does this match up? This simple thing, and it's basic, but it can help you to just get the ball rolling and kind of have that viewpoint of how you can get it. Because it's always important to do the foundations first before you start doing more fancy sort of the tactics of OA or Pirates or ADA or any of these sort of methodologies that you kind of hear about. But if you don't have the basics and the foundations right, it becomes a lot more harder to do. Cool. Any questions, guys? But a lot of times the basics work. Just getting that foundation, because with the objectives and looking at your target market, there's a lot of tools and methodologies that you can use to find your target market. There's a lot of tools and methodologies to find your brand strategy. It's just applying that thinking up front, saying, okay, well, this is the foundation, and I can build and layer on that, rather than just trying to jump to the top of the pile and try to figure out things with different tools, rather than trying to figure out on the basic foundation level. That's essentially what we're trying to get to, is that thinking and that foundational. Cool. Is any sort of questions that you guys want to talk more about or chat more about, please feel free to contact me if you want. But again,
Cool. Thanks, Nick.
Thanks,
cool.
Nick.
Thank you guys. Good luck with everything.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Bye.